As an IBM fellow, Rosalind Radcliffe had the opportunity to advance to executive leadership without being a people manager. Rosalind, thank you very much for joining us, and looking forward to hear your story.
Hello, and I'm happy to be here, not just because of the beautiful weather outside, but to talk to you and share my story. This talk was put together a while ago at the request, actually, of Gene Kim, to say he'd like to hear more about individual contributors and the activities that we do, and maybe a little bit about the project that I was in the middle of. And now that we're done, this is a much better session because the project is done. But let me tell you about why I wanted to do this and why I think this is an important topic. I am an executive in IBM, a Band C executive, so vice president level, but I have never been a manager. I'm very happy to have never been a manager because they have to do all that stupid paperwork. They have to deal with hiring and firing and all those things. I just get to lead technical teams, and I get to lead large technical teams, and I get to lead large technical projects. And so this is a little bit about my career. I've only been in IBM 36 plus years. I say only because there are plenty of people who've been in the company 40 plus, 50 plus, and so only seems like a good thing to say. But in my career, one of the things that is most important to recognize is that I've done everything possible except manager, and I've never been in finance. I'm not an accountant, and I'm not a lawyer or a doctor, and yes, we have those as IBM employees too, but I haven't had one career. While working for one company, I've done lots of different things. So as an individual, I've been a software developer, I've been a tester, I've been a human factors engineer. I was lucky enough to start in the industry back when we had a disaster of user interfaces, and that's the best way to put it. The mouse did different things on different systems. Keyboards were dramatically different. Not that the keyboard was different, but when you hit a key combination, it did different things depending on which system you were on. So I got to help with the standard of Control-C, Control-V, Control-X. Actually, that's the one that everybody understands the most, and everybody appreciates the most. File Edit View across the menu bar is another part of that standard. Everybody uses that standard today. It exists. And that was early in my career. That was one of the things I got to do. That is a lucky opportunity. It's a little challenging when you're 20-something and young and working with Apple and HP and DEC and a number of those companies, but it was fun, and it accomplished a goal. Throughout my career, there are a couple of things that are really important that I think are helpful to understand why I am where I am today. And that's who knows you and who you know. Because really and truly, as you go through your career, the most important skill you have is the people you know and the people you can work with. It's your collaboration. It's your willingness to partner with people. It's your collaborative nature. Because that's what gets you ahead. Who knows you is how you get promoted. Who you know is how you accomplish goals. No one person can know everything. Give me a break, hybrid cloud. Know everything? You can't know everything. But you can know enough people to know everything. You don't know it, but you know the people who help you do this. And so it is really important to understand this concept of working with people and driving. And I've had, my life is family, so family's up here, and my life is work, lots of work. And throughout my career, I have had the opportunity to lead, to deliver value. And the way I got to IBM Fellow was by making Z modern, sort of. The developer experience for Z modern. Modernize. Bring all the same tools into the environment. That's what I did to get Fellow. However, you don't get Fellow just based on what you've done, but you get Fellow to recognize that you're about to do even more. And so, fun career, and then I decided, yes, I want Fellow, and yes, I'm going to do this. So I moved into the IBM CIO's office. And to just make it clear, the IBM CIO's office is what runs IBM's IT. We do payroll, we do devices, we do help desk for the 350 to 380 to 250. I've been in IBM a long time, so we've had lots of different numbers of people. The numbers vary on a day-to-day basis. I personally think it changes dramatically, and it depends on the contracts we have, it depends on the work we're doing. But there are a lot of people in IBM, and we run IT for that organization. And this is somewhat of a picture of some of the things that we run. For those familiar with Z, we run things like Shop Z. For those thinking about the rest of the environment, I don't know, IBM homepage might run on a system that might be one of the ones we run. So we run all of those systems in the environment. IBM made a decision 2+ years ago now that we would separate our outsourcing business. When we separated our outsourcing business, IBM decided to insource all of our platform. And so the challenge that I was given was, okay, guess what? You got 2 years. You got to hire a whole new team, and you've got to move all the workload, and the date doesn't move. This was a date like Y2K. Y2K didn't move. And for those of you not old enough to remember Y2K, or for those of you who thought Y2K was not an issue, it was an issue. Our network would not have continued, our phone systems would not have continued, and I can keep going down the list. It was a date that did not move. I had fun bricking systems to remind executives over what was going to happen if we didn't fix the solution. So, that was a date that didn't move, and that was a real challenge. And yes, I did Y2K too. But this was a even more significant challenge in some ways, at least for internally IBM. We had to hire the whole new team. We had to get these systems moved. We had 11 data centers. We actually had more like 18, but we had 11 that were hosting Z workloads. We were moving to 4 data centers, except we only had 2. Somebody thought, don't know why, somebody thought we could move all of our workloads to 2 data centers in the US. And I showed up and went, what? That doesn't happen. I need 2 new data centers. Took a while. January, in this picture, January of 2023, everybody realized the problem, and so we built 2 additional data centers in this process between January and our exit date of 4th quarter 2023. So yes, that wasn't fun either. Designing and building and getting space for 2 locations in Europe, getting the hardware, including Z, and I actually have to buy hardware too. I have to get in the queue and get hardware too. I have to admit that I did twice, at least, use the excuse, well, IBM's business is dependent on it. Please do give me this machine. But we had to get the hardware, we had to get it set up, we had to get it running, and we had to hire the whole new team. Now, we decided in this process that there was no way we could modernize and move necessarily at the same time. Now, we did, in the distributed side, do some level of you have to move to containers as part of this transition because we really don't want to host all these systems. But in the Z side, we decided we weren't logically going to be able to move and modernize at the same time. And so in general, we lifted and shifted everything. We literally picked up LPARs and moved them across the world. Literally across the world. Now it's a challenge because we didn't necessarily have the network to do this, so we moved workload over the IBM internal network. Now we can't stop business, so we can't flood the network. So we have to make sure we're moving data at the right speed. And this is petabytes of data that we moved across the world and in the environment. At the end of 2023, 2 years, this was a real challenge, we made it. We had moved everything out of the environment, we were running our system, and fourth quarter 2023 actually proved to be the most calm, most successful quarter that we'd had in years. So not only did we have an entirely new team, we'd moved everything, but we also had a very successful fourth quarter. This was done because we had to, but this was done to help show the world that you can, one, hire skills. I hired an entire mainframe team. I didn't have any problem. And I'm not kidding. I didn't have any problem hiring people because this is a strategic environment. This is our strategic world. Our strategic world is Z and distributed. It is hybrid cloud. It is our strategic world. So I could hire people into this environment that knew this was where we were going to be. This was our strategy. It is our strategy. If you look at this wonderful picture at the bottom, CIO private cloud, this primarily runs Z, though it also runs Power and Intel, and then we work with IBM Cloud. Because the other goal as part of this project is we want to be client zero for our technology. We want to use before we ship to clients technology so that it can have been used in a very large scale, very large production environment before we give it to clients so that they have to run the environment. If we think about that, if you think about AI technology and the work that we're doing with Watson X, we actually ran a hackathon. No, we can't call it a hackathon, so a codathon, or whatever we called it. We caused the entire IBM company to use the technology before we GA'd it to show and demonstrate. So client zero work. We are now using Watson Code Assistant at IBM as a tool to help our developers so we can scale it, we can use it internally before we make it available. And this project, this is what we did, but this was why we were doing it. We really want to be client zero. We want to demonstrate a hybrid cloud environment. Now, my role in this was to set the strategy, to make sure, and to help hire people. No one else on the planet would have the challenge that I had in hiring people, though, because I had this limit. We couldn't hire from our company we were outsourcing. We also couldn't hire any existing company Z skills if they were currently employed. So I knew lots of people. My network was wonderful of people, But I couldn't hire them if they were active in a company, because that wasn't nice to the companies. So we had to hire people who were college hires, who were out in the industry, and/or people who were retired. And so we did. We hired people who were retired to help train up our new skills so that we could go forward with the work. We want to drive this in such a way that it is a seamless experience for our developers. And so the other thing that I drove was the creation of a developer experience, a developer portal, a developer pipeline that doesn't care what platform you're building. So in order to do this, we have to have a consistent way of working. So our developers don't care if they're doing PL1, and we are primarily PL1, or if they're doing Java or Node. They have a consistent pipeline. They have a consistent way of working, so bringing on new skills is not a problem. We also are doing this such that in the long term, or hopefully sometime this year, the developers won't actually know where their code runs. That might seem a little strange, and if it's PL1, that's not totally true. It will run in ZOS, yes. But as we're building systems, if it's a container-based environment, the developer won't care if it happens to run on our Z platform in the CIO hybrid cloud environment, or if it runs in IBM cloud. It won't matter because the pipeline will deploy it there appropriately for them based on capacity, based on closeness to data, based on take your choice of reasons. But through intelligent workload placement, we can run wherever is the most appropriate in the environment. And our developers don't have to worry about it. They don't have to think about it. They build a business function that's running in a container, and it gets deployed into the environment. We've also had to do a lot of work with data movement. We are a very old company, one might say. Been around 100+ years, and I'm sure I'll get it wrong if I try and get the dates, so 100+ years is good enough. If you think about that, and we have been using technology since the beginning of technology. So one of the things we actually discovered as part of this migration project is we have data from when the mainframe was invented. Do you think that data is still useful? Really? We have retention policy, we have retention periods. There are government regulations, there are banking regulations that say you have to keep data. Might be 7 years, might be 10 years, might be a little longer. It's not 50 years, but we still have it. And so one of the other things about this environment is making sure our teams understand and follow data retention requirements. So this project actually was an opportunity to discover all of the bad practices that we have, isn't that fun, and figure out the right ways of cleaning it up. So we've created a set of standards groups, we call them guilds. They are not enforcement groups. They're not enforcement, they don't enforce, but they create the set of standards that help make sure we're running on the hybrid cloud, make sure people are working in ways consistent. And the reason they're not enforcement bodies is because we need to innovate. We need to continue to change what we do. We need to continue to evolve. And so we need to make sure that through this process we are evolving and transforming with new technology as it comes about. But we want to make sure the existing technology is used in the most appropriate ways. We don't need someone picking a new language to play with just because. There are good reasons to use a new language, but just because I wanted to play when we have to run an enterprise is not necessarily the best thing to do. Now, IBM's been around a long time. You might imagine we probably have at least one of everything. We do. We have at least one of everything, and we need to stop that, because running everything at an enterprise scale is not fun, and I have to manage it. So no, one of everything's not happening anymore. We want to make sure that we standardize as appropriate as part of this, that we consolidate, that we bring things together. The other challenge about this is IBM's sustainability goals. Smile. Carbon neutral or whatever it is by a certain date. Yes, smile. How do you get there while you're running your whole systems? Well, you need to pay a lot of attention, and one of everything doesn't help. Standardized workloads allow you to move the workload around, allows you to bring value and make better choices. So I can move as much of this workload to my Z boxes. I own them. They're in my environment. I have them running. If I can move more workload there, I don't increase my energy footprint. I decrease my floor space, and I let cloud other people use those resources. So I can decrease my energy consumption. So making sure we're optimal use case of the environment helps ensure that we can work toward our sustainability goals. Now, our systems are not the worst part of our sustainability challenge. If you think about it, the fact that we get on airplanes might actually be a large portion of our sustainability. Our real estate may be another portion of our sustainability. So I can't affect all of it, but we can affect the parts that we can affect. You'll also notice in this picture lots of different platforms. Yes, I have X, that's obvious. Everybody runs something in Intel. Yes, I have ZOS. But yes, I also have IBM I, ZVM, you name it, we have it. IBM I is highly used in the manufacturing space. And if you don't think about it, IBM is a manufacturing company as well. And so we run our manufacturing systems on IBM I. It is the most appropriate platform, so we'll keep running IBM I. Fortunately, it runs on Power hardware, so I can put it wherever Power runs, which is helpful, so I can move that workload around as well. When you think about IBM, the other thing that's important to recognize is we run IBM financing, which means we run a bank. We run manufacturing, we run large-scale systems, we run consulting, and we run a software business, and we run IBM Cloud. So we have to deal with all of the regulations that are associated with all of these pieces. And that's the other reason why standardization matters. If you have to deal with government regulations for financial institutions in 42 plus countries, I think it's somewhere near that we run businesses, it's a real challenge to make sure that all of your developers can comply with all of those regulations. Like, it's not possible, would be a better way to put it. So by standardizing, we can help make sure all our developers can meet those goals. The other thing that's a challenge as part of this environment, and that's a challenge for all of us, is the secure build requirements that are coming down the pike. Now, US government has passed theirs, European countries have passed theirs. The secure build environments are getting more and more strict about what you can do and how you do your build in the environment. And so providing the standard platform to allow us to build is a key critical part of this. But one of the things that you can imagine is that when we started this process, we discovered that we weren't really standard. So I may have 366 ZOS LPARs running in my environment, and if anybody who knows ZOS should look at that and go, why? That's true. It's a good question. Why? We have that many because we used to manage ourselves as separate companies all around the world. And so we had to do consolidation. We brought all those systems together. But we ran the various different companies as independent companies. When you bring them all together, you now have a mess. Just like someone who buys another company, we do that too. When you buy another company and have to bring that in, you end up with extra systems. You end up with a mess. And so we are now working on this modernization of the environment to help improve our processes, help come up with the standards, including in the ZOS environment. So in that early picture, when I said we were a set of bunch of different systems trying to go from pets to cattle, we're on our way toward cattle. It will take a while to get to fully standard-based systems, but by having a plan and having a goal to get there, we move forward, and we move forward with this process. The other thing that we have to do with as many systems as we have is work toward self-healing and work toward better management of our systems. We aren't there today, but we continue toward this process. There are lots of metrics that people use for measuring improvement, and personally, I hate every measurement that has something to do with the developer productivity, because I don't know how to measure developer productivity, because I do know how to game every single one of them. So let's not work on that. So instead, yes, we do capture some of the DORA metrics, but one of the things that I heard from actually Topo Pau was talking about, instead of doing that as a metric of how we're doing, how about measuring break glass? How often do you have to break glass to fix something? And if you don't know break glass expression, it is how often does a human have to access a production system to fix it, or a controlled system, so QA may count. How often do you have to do that? So measuring break glass. I can tell you I'm miserable right now, but we're going to start measuring break glass. As we measure break glass, if or as we continue to improve our DevOps processes, our DevSecOps processes, as we continue to standardize and improve our measurements, our break glass challenge will go down, and we will have a more optimized environment. And we'll be able to measure our transformation in a way that can't be gamed, because most measures can be gamed, and that doesn't help any. I've been around long enough time to deal with Six Sigma, and if you don't remember that, congratulations. I remember the discussion about Six Sigma, and what that had to do with was removing the number of defects in your code. Well, if you were a product with hundreds of defects, you could improve. If you happened to work on a product that had very few defects, you had a problem. You had a really big problem. I happened to work on a product that maybe got 1 or 2 APARs a year. So in order to say I met the Six Sigma goal, I had to say we would have 0 defects in the product. Do you think I signed up for that? Do you think that measurement made any sense? No. So we all have to be careful and think about the measurements that we do. The other thing, if we think about container world and the container environment, we're trying to decrease the maintenance challenge. We're trying to make it easier to ensure that we've solved our security vulnerabilities. We've addressed things by rebuilding our containers. We ensure the latest container environment is there. But everything doesn't run in a container. We still have systems. And so we need to make sure those systems, especially when we think about ZOS or large environments, database environments that are not running in containers, we need to make sure we've decoupled the environment in a way that you can do maintenance in the system while everything still runs. Now, the reason this chart says help needed is because that's what Gene Kim says we have to do, but this is actually an important call for help. This is something that I think is really important for our industry to recognize that not all of us would make good managers, but many of us who would not make good managers can make good leaders. And so it really is important as an industry to recognize the individual contributor within the organization. Recognize that there are people who make really good leaders, but really should not be managers. No, thank you. Recognize that skill, recognize that value, and ensure that you have a career path for those individuals. Recognize that some people are really good developers, and they should be able to have a career being a developer. Some people are good architects. We need different professions for different people based on what they do. Because the most important thing in the job that we do is that at least some percentage of the time we're having fun. You can't have a job that's miserable because you will not do well. You will not succeed. You will not be innovative. You will not help the company. And so we need to make sure we have career paths so that people can have fun. If you looked at my career path, you'll notice I changed jobs a lot, mostly because I got bored. When I wasn't having fun anymore, when I didn't have some percentage of fun, then it was time to move. The project I was on, not many people would consider this, but I thought it was fun. Yes, I might be crazy, I get that. Trying to do this in 2 years might be nuts, but it was fun. It was a challenge. It was a proof point that it was possible to do, and it was energizing to be able to do something so significant. So having fun is critically important, and making sure we work together. The next one that I have on here is one, the new collar talent is a term that Jenny Rometty came out with first, I think. But it's really important to recognize that we need to bring in talent that isn't coming from universities, that isn't coming from the traditional backgrounds, because that allows us to bring in greater diversity. We have to have a greater diverse environment. As was mentioned first thing this morning, diversity brings better innovation, and that's absolutely true. By driving diversity, by bringing people in from various different backgrounds, we question each other. We argue more, maybe, but it's a positive argument because we're learning from each other. We're growing. And this new talent idea, the idea of bringing in new people with different backgrounds, really helps us deliver better value. Because we all have to deal with whether or not we're selling to end clients, or whether or not we're selling to end consumers. We have to deal with people. Technology is for people. And so we have to make sure that we're delivering for everyone, not just for the select few IT people that are out there. Not that IT people are very few, we are lots. The other thing, rotation programs, allowing people to move, allowing people to rotate, allowing people to change. In companies where we allow people to rotate more often, we keep them around. Hiring new people is expensive. I may not hire, but I know hiring people is expensive. Teaching them the business is expensive. It takes time. By doing rotation programs, people get to experience different things. They get to learn. They get to grow. And continuous learning is what keeps people excited about work. It's what keeps people interested in what they're doing. And so it's really important to make sure we're driving this idea of continuous learning, changing opportunities within an organization. So hopefully, this has given you a little bit about individual contributors and a little bit about this wonderful project that we just completed. It was a lot of fun. It was a challenge. It was fun. I will admit, I might be nuts, but it was fun to me. It let me have an opportunity to prove things that I kept being told weren't possible. Like, you can't hire mainframe skills. Well, I did it. I've got kids. I'm not supposed to use that word. I have people out of college working in the mainframe space. We have new-collar people working in the mainframe space. Yes, I did hire some retirees to get some experience into the environment, but we brought in people. Now, I didn't make them work in any particular way. I let them use whatever tools they wanted to within reason. We have Eclipse, we have VS Code, we have ISPF. Some of you didn't hear this earlier. If you looked in the chart, you would notice ISPF was early in my career, so I started in ISPF development, so I might have a small bias, but I don't make people use ISPF. No, it's their choice. And by doing that, we give the flexibility to people in the organization, and we give them a chance. But now, I want to open it up for questions before I use all the time.
Part of the fun and to accept the challenge was it is a proof point that it can be done. And this morning you told me you think it's also an important proof point for clients facing similar challenges. I mean, especially if we think about all the IBM skills and the IBM platforms, I mean, you've been close to the source. Is this really something you would say clients can do this, not being IBM?
I do not see anything that should stop any client from being able to move data centers, to be able to insource. I'm going to put a little caveat on. I'm not telling everybody you have to insource, but if you want to insource, if there's a reason to insource, we had a big reason to insource, anybody can do it. It is not impossible, and you could do it in 2 years. It is not hard. We have documented, and we will make sure it is externally available, the process for moving. So if you can move your workloads to a new system, if you can move your environment, we are also telling the story of how we hired people. So it's perfectly plausible for any company to do the same thing.
These short 2 years to get those teams to really work well together, very young people needed to learn much and the very experienced ones, and everybody knowing about those timelines. I think that must be an extra challenge. Can you elaborate a little about how to motivate them to see it through, go that way?
The timeline made it easier. It might seem a little strange, but by having a hard deadline, we actually could focus everyone on the same goal. Getting a company the size of large companies like IBM to focus on a singular goal is almost impossible. Well, it's impossible. By having such a goal, everyone could focus. Everyone could understand that this is absolutely critical. There is no choice. And we created a set of co-located teams to do the work. So we didn't, or mostly, we tried not to have people totally isolated. So we have a set of people in certain countries in order to do the work so that they could learn together, they could collaborate together, and they could grow together. Now, it wasn't totally true. My most senior retiree hires are spread all over, but in general, we tried to bring the new teams together, and for the people who weren't with others, we actually have 2 Christinas. Christina was the name of a persona that was new to Z for a while. And I have 2 of them, both of them new to Z. Both of them doing very well, but one of them happens to be in North Carolina and happens to be in my area. And so she comes to work and sits on the desk right next to me so that she can collaborate with the others in the organization and learn from those who are more experienced. So those that were not co-located with other teams, we could bring to a team that they could work with. And by getting this community feeling, they could work together better, they could understand, and really it's the community. It's driving people together, having those discussions of collaboration. We also run learning from incidents, and so we run a model of learning from our incidents. Yes, we had a lot of incidents along the way, but we learn from them, and failure's not the problem. The problem is not learning from your mistake. So making sure that we share information. And yes, we've had the same thing go wrong more than once, but it's because of a different cause. It's a different cause every time. We still have a problem. But we get through it. We learn from the mistakes. And so that's the learning environment, help bring it together.
At the open space out there, we had this discussion about that the senior management of an organization allows IT to innovate and to improve. I mean, now you had a deadline and you could tell everybody, well, follow my advice, but you made a deadline. So what do you see now from all the other things you identified that should be done now that you then get the resources, the money, or is this the wrong question?
So this is a challenge when you don't have the same kind of deadline. So I've done some other ways of causing things to happen. So for example, if you want to meet our internal security standards, our internal IBM security standards, you have to use an approved source code manager, you have to use certain scanning tools, well, the only way to do that is to onboard onto the CIO CI/CD pipeline. So my Z teams don't have a choice. The same is true for our Salesforce teams, for our ServiceNow team. It doesn't matter. You don't have a choice. In order to meet IBM's internal policy, you have to onboard. And so you force it in other ways. We have an inner source model for our CIO CI/CD pipeline, and it's for the CIO. It's not for all the product teams. They have their own forcing factor going on. But in CIO, we can force it this way, but we use an inner source contribution model, so we're not forcing them necessarily to do all the same things, but the parts of it that have to be standard, the security scanning, our CISO wonderful rules that they come up with, and our source code manager, they have to be the same. We have monitoring for source code, our source code environment in ways that is a little unusual. It's because we do a lot of development that's considered gold code or jewel code, depending on what you want to call it. And so we have to be very careful. So our source code monitoring is very limited. Is very significant. And so one source code manager is the best answer. We actually run GitHub. We run the largest, it's another thing the CIO does. We run the largest enterprise GitHub on-prem in the world. GitHub does not like us. They do like us and they don't like us. They have kept us back level for a while. We are now working on getting 2 level at their request. But they don't always want us to upgrade right away because we could break it. So they want to see other clients upgrade first. In this case, we're not client 0. GitHub doesn't want us to be client 0. So we're updating and we're getting there. But we have all our source mostly in GitHub because of the monitoring requirements that we have internally. So we force it with other ways. And it allows us to get things done.
When you showed your career, there was, and you mentioned it specifically, building the modern DevOps toolings for the C platform. And you mentioned also that you've been using them in the project. So now you've been one of your most demanding clients. Yeah. So how was that?
The development team that I left does not like me. Oh, before I left, in building the modern Z development, there were a set of requirements that we were working on that I have just helped push post-leaving. So I am a challenging client. I do not accept not getting what I want, but we work as client zero. And so actually things like the refactoring assistant that are part of Watson Code Assistant for Z, we helped partner with the development team with our code to build it so that we could have it. CIO, one of the challenges with AI models is the data. Yeah, the concern over data. What data is feeding the model? So in IBM, we have committed the CIO PL1 source code to train the model on PL1. So we know the source of all the code. We know where it comes from. We know the license because it's ours. It's written by us. We have it. And we can decide that we wish to train the model on that. And so we are. So all of IBM's internal applications are being used to train the AI model for PL1. We're using internal IBM applications to train Java, et cetera. So that's what we're doing. We're helping make sure that we can improve the process through a collaboration of client zero.
And would you see IBM collaborating also with clients to get more source code for certain things? I mean,
I highly suspect that clients are not willing to share their source code. How's that for an answer? We are happy to partner with clients and are partnering with clients in areas to help improve the products and the capabilities. I don't know so far that we found a client that wants to provide their source code to train our models, but I don't think anybody wants to do that. There are probably some areas where people are saying, yes, this should be provided because it's generic, it's open, it's not. So yes, we're looking at that, but most people are saying, no, you can't train your model on our source code. Same is true in actually all of the source code that's been used to train some models didn't necessarily get all the permissions ahead of time. Is that the polite way of putting it? Yeah.
Hello. Okay, thank you very much. We had a couple of questions, but I don't know, Joachim, you were very visionary, so you basically kind of covered it, and you answered. Yeah, I know. Very inspirational talk. Thank you very much. I have here one more question. So, and it feels like it's worth sharing. So, even though you're not managing people, obviously you have a team, right? A big team. So, give us some tips on how you transfer your ideas, your attitude, your behavior to your team members.
I try to be as visible and active as possible within the organization. So I go into the office almost 5 days a week. Well, not for the last month, because I've been traveling in Europe. But normally, I go to the office. So I help make sure people see the way I work. In meetings, I try to make sure that people see that I want other ideas to come out. I want to cause collaboration. I do a lot of sessions in IBM about the value of diversity and the value of listening to other ideas and other thought processes to try and open up the community. I also do a lot of sessions, roundtables when I travel with sites, and so I don't normally sit in Budapest or Bratislava, but I did sessions and roundtables with them to get them the idea of how I work and how I collaborate. The other thing that most people say is I don't know how not to tell the truth, and I don't know how not to be brutally honest. And so people understand that that's what I expect, and I'm happy to do it. They can also tell that my face is really good at telling when somebody's saying something that's not true. And so I'm always on camera, and if I disappear off camera, you know something's going on. So it's a good way of people, they get used to my expressions, and then they understand the relaxed nature in some ways, and the fact that I'm also willing to say, I don't know, here's the person who knows. So that's the other thing I do. I can't answer every question, and I don't get the answer and provide it. I connect them so I grow their network by connecting them to the people who know that area. And so I grow other people's networks by using my network to grow their network. And so I give them an example of how to lead.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.